Good morning, family. It's time to wake up and see and put your crowns back on your head. I'm your uncle, brother, cousin, friend, John, back here with another royal lesson. But before we get in today's royal lesson, let's take care of a little channel maintenance. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you also comment down below. Your comment could also be a question. Your question could become a future royal lesson. So make sure you're commenting down below. And even if you don't know what to comment, tell me how your day is. Also, make sure that you press the notification bell down below and subscribe to the channel so that way you are aware of when I upload new videos. And if you've seen any of the hats, and I'm not wearing a hat right now, this is just a do-rag, or any of the shirts that I'm wearing, and you're like, man, it's a nice shirt and a nice hat, and I promise you it's a lot nicer in person, you can check out my clothing brand, and the link is down below. My clothing brand is Prince Richmond. It's just reminding us that we're all the divine children of the Most High God, and to remember that you are royalty. You can check that out in the description with the link down below, princerichmond.com. But all right, family, let's go ahead on and get into the royal lessons. So over hundreds and thousands of years, there's been a lot of back and forth debate as to whether Jesus is God. And for a good measure, I will refer to Jesus as Yeshua for the remainder of this video. A lot of people have even started wars and arguments, broken up relationships because of this one question and the understanding behind it. I believe in order to really answer this question, we have to break down a lot of Yeshua's experience on earth and what was really happening and what was really being said in order to answer the question as to whether Yeshua was God or not. So I'm going to start with Yeshua's early life, his childhood, because your childhood is the most pivotal years of your entire life. That is when you start understanding and forming an opinion about the world and how you should operate. So this is important. And there is a lot of knowledge that was just kind of glazed over here. I don't believe we need any of the apocrypha, because if you take a little cultural and historical understanding and then you read Yeshua's early life, a lot of who he was and what he believed in starts to make sense. So I want to help build a picture for you. So let's go ahead on and get into Yeshua's early life. So in the Bible, we do understand, and this is, you can see this in Matthew 2:12. In the Bible, we do understand that Joseph and Mary took Yeshua when he was born and fled to Egypt. This is mainly because at the time, a lot of that area, including Jerusalem and Egypt, was Roman occupied, meaning that Rome had ultimate control of that entire area or region. Therefore, Rome started to install their own people into the seats. The king of Jerusalem was no longer a Jew, but it was a Roman who was installed. The Roman that was installed, we're talking about his son, King Herod. King Herod was the ruling king of Jerusalem at the time that Yeshua was born. King Herod heard that the wise men were going to meet the new king of Jerusalem because he had just been born. This basically pissed King Herod off, and King Herod sent out a decree to have any child 2 years and under, so under 2 years and under that age, basically wiped out. And y'all know what I mean by that. He wanted them slain because he was like, nobody's going to challenge me, my throne, or my future's throne. So this makes Joseph and Mary scared, because they're like, okay, they're about to take my child, and they flee all the way to Egypt to get away from this decree. Because even though it's Roman occupied, this was just something that was solely tied to King Herod's ego. So this is a very, very big part of helping to really understand who Yeshua is and what he believed in, because they go to Egypt. And I want to break down Egyptian religion in order to help build this picture. So a lot of people tend to think that Egyptian religion is very polytheistic in the ways that Greek and Roman religion was. But that wasn't really the case. They weren't like heavily worshiping these gods in a certain way. And even in Greek and Roman religion, they weren't like really heavily worshiping these gods. I think through TVs and movies, we get this bad depiction of what was really happening. But I'm going to focus specifically on Egyptian religion. So in Egyptian religion, they have always believed that there was one creator God. Matter of fact, they believe that this creator God is invisible, and this creator God spoke the world into existence, or spoke creation into existence. This creator God did basically create other beings who they viewed as gods that controlled certain aspects of creation, whether it was love, whether it was wisdom, whether it was chaos, whether it was the water, the sky, or anything. Basically, this is what these beings' jobs were. It was to maintain and make sure that the flow of these things continued. In Egyptian belief, more specifically, the Pharaoh had a better understanding of this. This is why they called the Pharaoh a god. It wasn't about the Pharaoh necessarily having an ego, even though there were some pharaohs who had egos. But from a young age, the Pharaoh was taught about the true meaning of what they were believing and what they were trying to achieve through this belief. Through this belief, it was about overcoming each aspect of both the physical and spiritual realm, so that way you could become one with the Most High God, or the God, the Creator God that they believed in. It was about learning to free yourself from humanity and become what you were always intended to be, a higher divine being. And that's why they say the Pharaoh was basically like an intermediary between the divine and the human world. That's why the Pharaoh was the only one that could really rule. But it wasn't limited to the Pharaoh, but it was also spread to more of the high society people, the priests, the rich people. They understood what the true belief was. It was about overcoming the limitations of the physical and spiritual realm, again, to become one, or to become truly divine with the Most High. So I know a lot of you are already like, okay. So if I had to put this in more of a Christian belief, basically, it was like the Most High created angels, and he gave each angel an assignment. Your assignment is love. Your assignment is chaos, because you can't create without a little chaos happening. Like, that's just the truth. Your aspect is water, make sure that the water flows. Your aspect is the air, the sky, make sure that the clouds are moving perfectly, make sure this and that and that. This is basically how you should see Egyptian religion, in the sense. So when they talk about overcoming it, again, not being limited to human belief, but understanding that you are more, you were created by a higher being that wants you to connect with it. And I believe that this is something that is missed heavily, because a lot of people view other religions to be, demonic. So they don't even take the time to really understand what these people were believing. And that's why it's important to have this type of historical and cultural understanding when you're reading the Bible, because it starts to help you paint a better picture of what's actually happening in the Bible, what's being said, and how you should take it within yourself to grow and to learn. So again, this is what's happening in Egyptian belief. We also know that at some point in time, the Jews were enslaved in Egypt. And that would mean that they were influenced by a lot of the Egyptian beliefs. And we can see the same similarity, because just how the Egyptians basically created this obelisk of like each of the gods you needed to overcome to connect back to the one true God, the Jews later on created something called the Kabbalist tree of life. They didn't use gods, but they did use each aspect, whether it was chaos, whether it was love, whether it was, lust or something like that. They created these aspects on the tree, things you needed to overcome to connect with the Most High God. And this is very similar to what was happening in Egypt. Now, how does this tie back into Yeshua? So let's start talking about who Joseph was. Joseph, and back then, right quick, just to fill this in, a father, whatever the father did, more than likely the son would do as a job as well, because the father would take the son under an apprenticeship and teach him what to do. What we know about Joseph is Joseph was a craftsman, or a lot of people say that he was a carpenter, but based off of historical context and geography and stuff of that nature, there was no possible way to build with the type of trees that they have out there in Egypt. Therefore, Joseph would have been more of a stonemason. We know that a lot of the Roman and Egyptian architecture is made out of stone. It's built heavily by stones and brick. And this is what Joseph would have been, therefore making Yeshua a stonemason as well. It is a very precise job, and if you ever come across a true stonemason, you'll learn just how careful you have to be, how precise. If you hit one part the wrong way, the whole thing is messed up. So it's a very tedious job. So Yeshua would have been a stonemason, and that comes into play because with Joseph being a stonemason at the time that Rome occupied Egypt, Joseph would have been a very valuable person to the growth and expansion of the Roman Empire and the architecture that they wanted to build out there and how they wanted to expand. Joseph would have been pretty valuable, therefore leading to Yeshua having a opportunity at getting a more formal education. During that time in Egypt specifically, and during Roman occupation, it was more of about a societal class. The poorer children were not allowed to get a formal education. They had to learn from scraps, basically meaning that they had to learn from their parents, whatever they could, or, they had to learn from old books if they could get some, or maybe somebody of a higher class took some pity and would teach a few lessons. But other than that, they weren't able to go to school and get a formal education because they were viewed as lower class. Higher class kids or higher society kids were able to go to the temples and stuff and learn and get a better understanding of mathematics and astrology and health and, again, religion. And I believe Yeshua would have been allowed to go to these formal educational classes. This would help Yeshua start learning to ask questions and to ask follow-up questions in more detail to get a better understanding of life itself. Whether it was like, oh, well, why do we do this? Oh, we do that because of that. So why does that do that? And this is how Yeshua would have talked. We learned that at some point in time, and this is during the Passover, it's the big journey that a lot of the Jews take all the way back to Jerusalem, and they go for the Passover to have the dinner, and they would have traveled back home. So as they're traveling back, they realize Yeshua is no longer in the caravan. They thought he was playing around with some of the other kids in another caravan, but they realize Yeshua is just nowhere to be found. So they turn around, they go back to Egypt, and they find, they go back to Jerusalem, and they find Yeshua in the temples, in the synagogues, learning and teaching, depending on the scripture that you get. It says different things. He was learning or teaching either to doctors or to healers or to, I forgot the other word, professionals. I've seen so many different versions of this one specific part, but basically to a lot of important people or a lot of professional people, no matter who they were, he was in there learning and teaching. So how can a child actually teach? I believe if you've ever been around a child long enough, a child has asked you a question that, that why question that made you sit down and say, well, yeah, why do we do that? And now that leads you to ask more questions. It's in a way teaching you because now you're seeking more wisdom. It's teaching you beyond what you already knew. This is what Yeshua would do by learning and by teaching with the professionals there. So how does this tie back to Egyptian religion and Jewish belief? Yeshua, growing up a Jew in Egypt, would have started to notice a lot of the similarities between their belief, overcoming different aspects of the world to get back with the one true God, because we are all creations of the Most High God, meaning that we are all children or divine children of the Most High God. This would really influence a lot of Yeshua's belief. Also, Yeshua was told as a child he was the Son of God. So, of course, his mind was really open to understanding God more. Of course, his mind was about seeking knowledge and learning that we had to overcome this world, and not only this world, but the spiritual realm, in order to truly become whole and gain a better understanding of the one true God or the Most High God. So again, now maybe you're starting to pick up what I'm saying. So with Yeshua learning all of this, he would have learned that as humans, we are much more capable than we think we are. Yeshua would grow up seeing a lot of oppression in his time by both the Egyptian, not just the Egyptian, but mainly by the Roman Empire and the people that they installed in each of these areas. Because I do believe at the time that Yeshua was born, Rome was not only Egypt was not only occupied by Rome, but I don't think that there was a actual pharaoh that had ruled in Egypt for a long time. So it would have been basically like a governor or a person from the Roman Empire who actually ruled over Egypt at this time. So again, Yeshua is now learning that we have to take a look at both the physical and spiritual things. We're based off of his family's belief and the belief of where he lives at. It seems like everybody's talking about the same thing to Yeshua. Even if you hear about stuff outside of the Bible, I believe even India has claimed that Yeshua came there at some point in time at a young teenage age and learned more about spirituality. Even there, they do ultimately, again, you have to study these religions, they do believe that you are to become one with the original creator or one with the world. The physical realm, the spiritual realm, all of that in order to become more divine, to not be so trapped within the world. So Yeshua would have been influenced by a lot of these things, and that would have led him, as he sought and he kept asking questions and more questions, it would have helped him to form a teaching, understanding that would allow him to teach it back to others so that way they could overcome the world. This is the beginning of understanding what Yeshua was teaching, and also, more importantly, answering if Yeshua is God or not. You have to bring in a lot of historical and cultural context, and not only just cultural when I mean dancing and food, but I also mean like what did they believe in those areas. He was a traveler. A lot of information passed back then through traveling. That was the only way that news or information or belief could really spread at that time. You had to physically get your behind up and walk all the way somewhere, get on a donkey, a camel, a horse, or anything, get on the back of somebody's caravan in order to get to where you needed to go. It didn't have email, they didn't have phone calls, they didn't have a post office. So with him traveling, especially with his family, going through different regions, different places, being a valuable, having valuable skills as a stonemason, not only him, but his father, it would lead them to go to a lot of places. But in the Bible itself, we only really know about Egypt being one of those major places that he spent most of his childhood at. So again, a lot of you probably have already started to pick up what I'm putting down. And I hope you all stay tuned for this series. Now, I will say this is just because I've studied other religions, it does not mean that I believe in any other religion. I do personally believe that there is one true God, one true living God. And that's what I'm trying to help us all do, is to get back to the Most High God, to not only get back to the Most High God, but build a relationship strong enough with the Most High God that this world or the spiritual world does not affect you as a person. You know how to stand strong and firm within the Most High God, so that way you don't let anything knock you off balance. I really want you all to start putting your crowns back on your head, and that's why I'm sitting down doing this. You don't have to agree with anything that I'm saying when, along the lines of if Yeshua is God or not, but it is important to really understand who Yeshua is and what Yeshua experienced, especially as a child, in order to get a better understanding of what Yeshua was teaching, which will also help you better understand if Yeshua was saying that he was God or not. So I'm going to end the video here, and I hope I was able to teach you all something in two of the scriptures that I did write down, so you can go and kind of read it yourself. And ironically, they're the same numbers, which is, I told you, the Most High moves in very mysterious ways. It was Matthew 2:12. And again, this is when they fled Egypt from King Herod, saying, hey, go slay all the children 2 years old and under. And then also when Yeshua was found learning and teaching in the temples and synagogues, that was Luke 2:12. So Matthew 2:12 and Luke 2:12. I want you all to be able to go read that for yourself. And if you're wondering, if you're like, well, John, how did you get a better understanding of Egyptian religion? Y'all, these people do not pay me at all, but I might be saying his name very wrong. Muwata Ashby created this book called The Kemetic Tree of Life, where he basically has done a lot of study on Egypt, what Egypt was believing at the time, a lot of translations, and I haven't even made it through the book. I just read a few chapters, and I think I even went online to look at some things, and I was already like, oh my gosh, this was the missing piece. I do take a lot of time. I do take a lot of time to sit down with the Most High God. So I'm not going to come out with videos like that, because I really want to be able to gather research. And because for me, the Most High God just gives me something. And I'll randomly open up the Bible one day, and then what I was thinking about is there to confirm it. But then I'm like, okay, well, how do I put more context behind it? And then I go down this long path of bringing in different things and trying to find physical evidence. So when I talk about it, I say, well, like, here's the things that I'm talking about. So yeah, I hope you all have enjoyed this video. I hope you all stay tuned for the rest of the series. Again, I'm going to break it down into different videos. No, wait, hold on. First of all, before I end this video, make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you also comment on the video down below. Make sure that you also subscribe and press the notification bell down below, so that way you're aware of when I post new videos. Also, again, check my clothing brand, Prince Richmond, at princerichmond.com. At the link in the description down below. I couldn't even think of how to get those words out of my mouth just now. I've said a lot, okay? But know that the Most High God loves you. Know that I love you. Take care, family.